Welcome to our next episode on Burnout Solutions. We are talking about caring versus carrying and how you can stay in your lane this school year. And if school has not started for you and you don't have kids, don't worry. I believe you will still find value in this episode. So listen up.
Welcome to Burnout Solutions. My name is Mona Tippett. I am a registered nurse, a life coach, an emotional resiliency expert, and a mom. I love to help healthcare workers and caretakers and just busy, capable people understand their brain and nervous system so stress, overwhelm, and frustration do not run their life. Here on this podcast, we break down burnout, emotional overload, and survival patterns in simple human language. I love to give you practical ways to feel safer, calmer, and more present in your everyday life. You do not need fixing. What you need is support and a nervous system that knows that it's safe. Thanks for being here.
Hello and welcome back to Burnout Solutions. I am excited to record this episode. Today I am home alone. School has started back up in my world, and so it has been nice to just have some free time. I've thought a lot about our new school year, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. I apologize that my voice, I hope will make it through. We just got back from an amazing vacation. We spent a week on a cruise in Mexico and with my family celebrating my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. And all of my siblings were there and their spouses, and most of the grandkids were there. I had a son who wasn't, and then two of my sisters had one child and their spouse that weren't there. But otherwise, everyone was there. It was so fun. We had the best time. And I came back to being sick with really smoky weather. Idaho and Utah, we drove through Utah. It's so smoky. It just smells like fire. Anyway, so that's just a little bit about what I've been doing lately. But today I wanted to talk about new things. I love new things. I love the new school year. I love the fall. My birthday's in the fall, and so I feel like it's kind of like a really good reset for me. And I've been thinking a lot about parents and sending our kids back to school and how we can show up differently, maybe a little bit better this year, and how we can differentiate caring for our children and taking care of them and maybe their problems that they have in their life, problems being in air quotes, versus carrying their problems and getting anxious and reactive and, managing our brain so it doesn't spiral out of control when it comes to our kids' issues. So that's what I've been thinking about. We've been doing the school shopping, and we've bought new backpacks and new shoes and clothes and all this stuff. We have new schedules, and, as a nurse or a teacher, you have new class assignments or patient assignments. And sometimes I think in the back of our mind, we think, okay, this year is a restart and I'm finally going to get things right. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. And I want you to think, how many times have you felt maybe exhausted by somebody else's life choices or somebody else's life? And maybe not our own to-do list, but we have that. And then added on top of it with another layer is somebody else's to-do list or somebody else's choices or our kids' grades or your patient's choices or your students' choices. And you can't totally explain why it's sitting so heavy on you. So today we're going to kind of just make that differentiation. I think there's a fine line between caring for somebody and carrying them. Caring fills you up. Even when it's hard, it comes from an authentic, intentional place where carrying can quietly, steadily drain you, even when they both can look like love from the outside. So whether you are sending a kid back to school this year or walking into a new shift or a new classroom or just even coaches coaching new clients, this episode is for you. So I am going to try to give you 7 signals where your caring has cross that line into carrying with some real examples from parents, nurses, maybe some teachers. And then I'm going to give you some ideas of how you can stay in your lane. So let's just get into it. And let's talk first about the distinction a little bit more, because I really want to get clear on the difference, because these two things, like I said, can look almost identical sometimes from the outside. Caring, I believe, says, I love you. It says, I'm here. I will support you in ways that I genuinely can. It is driven by our core values, by, mission statement, like who do I want to be right now? And that is what is fueling these decisions. Carrying, on the other hand, can say, or we feel, or it is the invisible thought that your life is mine to manage, or this problem is mine to manage, and the outcome is mine, or even a little bit of mine to answer for. And there is, of course, shocker, a nervous system piece behind it. Caring comes from a regulated place, right? Ventral vagal, where we are in a connected space. We want to be intentional. It's driven by authenticity and good vibes. Whereas carrying comes from somewhere else, and it's usually fawning, like I talked about a few episodes ago, or a survival response, a fight or flight response, dressed up in a very loving costume. And we are trying to actually manage our own feelings, our own anxiety, our own insecurities by controlling the outcome, by controlling somebody else's outcome, by controlling what's going on around us. And I think this is pretty hard as a parent, because you're like, no, I'm like in charge of this kid. Well, you kind of are, but you kind of aren't. And my husband and I talk about it all the time with parenting. Like, how do we hold a boundary without preventing a natural consequence, et cetera, et cetera. I'll talk about that more. Let me just give an example to help maybe define caring versus carrying a little bit. So a parent who helps a child study for their test is caring. A parent, I believe, like yesterday, my daughter wanted to change her schedule. So I had her email the counselor. I had her print out the form. I talked about it. She wants to take a different math class at a different level, and we plotted it all out. And I said, is this what you want? Because I'm not going to force you to take a math class that you're not ready for, that you don't want to. And yet I don't want you to take the easy way out and take this easier math class if it's not at your level. And, do you want college credit for it? Do you not? I don't want to make you take a class that you're not ready for and you're not willing to put in the work for. And after we had this long discussion, I actually left it up to her. Now, with all the information that I have given you, I actually let her choose the math class that she wanted to, which is a big step from where I was 5 years ago. I'm letting her decide if she really does want the easier class, if she wants a harder class, if she wants a really hard class. And I believe that is caring. Now, carrying is when you can be a parent who, I have been this parent before. I've come a long way, but this is a parent that quietly rewrites the essay at 11 p.m. because it has to be good. That parent has slipped into carrying the load. I remember when my children were in second grade, they had these projects. And this kid brought this project, and I looked at it. I'm like, clearly that was not done by a second grader. That looks like an adult created that entire project. And it looked amazing, but definitely was not a second grader that was doing the project. And, I think about nurses who educate their patients on diabetes management and gives them all the information, and they check in and help the patient, that's being warm and caring. A nurse who feels personally responsible for whether that patient actually did what they were taught to and actually did eat the right foods and actually did monitor their blood sugar and their insulin and et cetera, is carrying something that was never that nurse's problem to carry. Now, I think logically we know Well, of course, that's not my problem. So another way of caring is judging. If you are judging that patient, oh, they know better, they should have done better, that's another clue that you are carrying something that isn't yours to carry. So I hope you can see the difference. They can look like the same love, attention, and care. They can look like they have the same good intentions, but they are coming from a completely different nervous system state underneath. Okay, so now I want to talk about 7 different signals of ways that might be indicating that you are carrying instead of caring. And when you listen to these, I want you to pay attention to how they are landing in your body. What are you feeling when you hear these things and not just things in your head? So the first signal is you're working harder for somebody else's success than they are. And when I started life coaching, I promised myself, like, I cannot care more about my clients making the change than they can because it's going to drive me crazy. For parents, you're more invested in the science fair or the math class or the prom date or, whatever, more than your child is. You're the one who's Googling the poster board ideas and staying up until midnight and coloring the poster and etc. while they're upstairs playing video games, completely unbothered. They don't have any investment in it. For a nurse, maybe you're chasing down a patient's follow through on their care plan harder than they are themselves. And you're doing the mental math on their medications and their schedule and what they need to take while they haven't even given it a second thought. And I think with medicine, it's hard because that's our job, is to help our patients understand. But there is a way that we can do it so that the patients are more invested. And a question you could ask yourself is, whose life force is fueling this? If it's yours, then that's your signal. We need to let other people around us care for themselves and take initiative and take the investment into their own problems. Okay, the next one is when somebody else's choices becomes a thermostat or a barometer for your own nervous system. I've talked about this a little bit. So with parents, your whole evening's mood rises and falls on whether your kid remembered their homework, whether your kid had a great first day of school. My daughter came home for lunch for a minute and told me a little bit about her day. So far, it seems a little bit better. Last year she had an awful first day. So did both of my girls had an awful first day, and they told me about it. And I was a little bit nervous for them because I felt like they both represented themselves wrong. I felt like one of my daughters was planning on having this wonderful year with several friends that she had made over the summer. And then it was very apparent on the first day that she was not going to be in this group of friends because they straight out told her, we don't feel like you fit in this friend group. And those things I get as a parent can be hard when we care about that, but we don't let those things ruin our nervous system and ruin our day. Then we can show up better. This one can be a little bit sneaky because it feels like empathy, but real empathy lets you feel with someone without your own baseline getting hijacked, right? We're staying in control. We're relaxing our body when we're having a conversation. Their choices are literally their choices, and it's not setting our nervous system's temperature. So just check in with that. Are people around me and their choices setting me off, putting me in a bad mood? Stress is contagious, and yet we can interrupt that cycle and set up a different feeling in the environment. Okay, so signal 3 is you feel responsible for preventing every possible consequence. You're the parent emailing the teacher before your kid even turns in a late assignment. You're the one that's smoothing things over before they even feel the friction of their choices. With a nurse, you're overfunctioning, making sure a patient never faces the natural result of their own choices. You're even thinking about it outside of your shift. A lot of our Invisible thoughts are, if I stay in control, nothing bad will happen. If I manage this, then I will feel safer because I can control the situation. Um, that's the logic underneath. Even when you've never said that out loud, even when you can't see that, that's actually the nervous system trying to create safety in a perceived environment of danger. And a fresh start often activates this part of our nervous system. A new year, it's a new energy, it's new pressure to do things right. And again, this pressure is not a personal flaw. It's a survival strategy that got wired into us a long time ago, probably for a good reason. It was probably helpful at the time. And remember, the best news ever is that survival strategies can be retrained. You are not stuck being the boss of everyone else's outcome. You get to be the boss of your own brain instead and decide where I'm carrying and where I am carrying. Okay, so now that we have talked about carrying and caring, how can we keep ourselves in our right lane and what can we actually do about it when we realize that we are carrying a little bit more than we want and we want to get back into caring? First, I want to expand the word that I used a little bit earlier, which was overflow. Overflow means that you're giving from a cup that is already full. It's the extra, it's the surplus, it's the part that spills over naturally, authentically, with intention, without having to reach down and scrape the bottom of the barrel in yourself to find it. It's when you give from overflow that you can be generous and still walk away with something left, if not even more full. It doesn't cost you your own regulation. It doesn't cost you, it's not taxing to your own emotions. Pressure giving is the opposite. You're reaching past empty. You're giving from the bottom of the cup, sometimes from underneath the cup. And we call it love because it looks or can look like the same thing from the outside. If overflow doesn't quite land for you, here are some other ways to think about it: capacity, bandwidth, reserve, surplus, margin. Regulated generosity, meaning generosity that comes from a calm nervous system instead of an anxious one. Some coaches call it resource giving. I like to think of it simply as, can I do this and still be okay? If the honest answer is no, that's not overflow, that's obligation. That can be disguised as overflow. So let me just make it a little bit more concrete with a few more examples. So overflow parenting looks like sitting down to help with homework because you genuinely have the mental bandwidth tonight, and you stop on purpose when that bandwidth is gone, trusting that maybe if we didn't get it through, one skipped homework page isn't going to break your kid, isn't going to ruin your relationship, and you're stopping because you're preserving the relationship over the actual finished outcome. Pressured parenting and caring looks like you are going to finish it through gritted teeth, no matter the time or the hour, because you are terrified of what it means about you, about your child, if this homework isn't finished. Overflow in nursing looks like sitting an extra 2 minutes with a scared patient because you have that to give in this moment. It means talking with a scared family member. It means taking those tiny, tiny micro moments to listen and look people in the eye, smile, not be in a rush. Where pressured nursing looks like staying late, skipping your own breaks, absorbing every patient's emotional state and their families because you feel like a bad nurse if you don't do that. Sometimes it's the same action. Sometimes it looks the same from the outside, but people can tell. People can tell. They use their neuroception. They can tell with their eyes. They can tell by your energy. They can tell by the look on your face while you're doing it. And it looks completely different when it is fueled from different sources. So now let's talk about some actual things that we can do. So the practice number 1 is overflow check. Before you step in to help, before you want to step in, I want you to pause for just 3 seconds and ask yourself, is this overflow? Do I have the capacity to handle this? Or is this fear dressed up as help? I'm not asking you to go into a long meditation. I'm just saying pause for 3 seconds. Notice if your chest is tight. Notice if your breath is shallow. Relax your body when you consider stepping in. If you have a tight chest, shallow breath, that's pressure talking. Now, if you feel steady and you're willing and you feel able, then that's usually from overflow. Practice number 2 is actually own what's yours to own and name what is actually theirs to own. Literally out loud or in your head, say, this belongs to them. Let them do this. This is their homework. Let them do it. Their friendship conflicts is their friendship conflicts. Their medication compliance and food compliance is their problem to solve. Their feelings about a hard diagnosis. This isn't being cold. It's actually the most respectful thing you can do because it treats them as they are capable to live their own life. And when we have confidence in them, then they can pick up on that confidence, like, I can do this. Practice number 3 is replacing rescuing with resourcing. So instead of doing things for, ask what they need to do so that they can do it themselves. For your kid, it might sound like, hey, what's your plan for getting this done? Hey, I hear you saying that you don't want to do this math class. What math class do you want to do instead and why? For a patient, it might sound like, what feels like the hardest part about this plan for you? Instead of managing every single detail yourself, you can ask them, what feels most daunting? What goes on in your head when we give you this education? What is holding you back? What are your biggest barriers to maintaining a schedule with your medication or your insulin or, whatever? So when we can call it out and talk about it in a non-threatening way, then we are caring. Okay, practice number 4 can be let the natural consequence be the teacher. This one is hard. I absolutely know. A forgotten assignment, a forgotten lunch, a missed appointment, a skipped medication dose within safe limits. These can be the exact experiences that create real learning. Your job isn't to remove every consequence, it's to be present with them while they move through it. I think as parents, we often step in way too early because we don't want to see our kids sad or mad or hurting or left out. And these can be the perfect teachers for them. Practice number 5 is check your own nervous system before you check theirs. Before you ask, are they okay? Ask yourself, am I okay right now? Am I regulated right now? Can I show up with the energy that I want? Can I show up in a way that I will represent myself well? Because if you are dysregulated, anything that you offer is going to come from a dysregulated nervous system state, from fawning, from fighting, from fleeing, not from a steady, caring one. So again, take a quick breath, relax your shoulders, just name it. I am feeling activated right now. I am feeling nervous right now. I am feeling anxious right now. That's not the best time to talk to your child or your patient or try and fix things. Once you can bring yourself back to a place where you can show up and it can actually help instead of just stepping in to manage that anxiety through controlling them. And practice number 6 is release the outcome and don't use your outcome as a scoreboard. At the end of a hard day, instead of asking, did it turn out okay? Try asking, was I present? Did I offer what I genuinely had to give? That's the real scoreboard, not the report card, not the lab result, not how your students performed on their ISATs, but are you showing up with your core values, with your honesty, with integrity, and with your own capacity? None of this means, I want you to know, that you stop caring. It means that you start caring in a way that doesn't cost you yourself. It's what working differently means, not working harder. And this is how it looks like in real relationships and real micro moments in life. Okay. And that is all I have today. So in closing, Whether you're navigating a new school year or a new job or a new classroom or a new shift, just remember that we have our same nervous system, and our nervous system often has a pattern. And when we can watch for that pattern and use these signals and these practices that I suggested with our nervous system, then we can gently and over time rewire to be more intentional. Sometimes the most loving thing that we can do is to trust that other people's lives belong to them and trust that they are capable to handle it. When we can release what was never ours to carry, it isn't withdrawal. It's how you stay close to your kids and your patients without becoming all consumed by their outcomes. It's how you hold space for somebody without losing yourself inside of their experience. So, thank you for listening. If any of these 7 signals landed with you today, whether you heard yourself as a parent or as a nurse, a teacher, I want you to know that I love helping people identify their patterns and untangle them. And this is what I do on my burnout recovery call. So this is a no pressure, no sales pitch. It's just real conversations about what you might be carrying instead of caring and how we can gently change that. So thank you for listening.
Every week, you're learning something new here on this podcast, and that is a powerful first step. But guess what? Information alone doesn't create transformation. True change happens when you start to think differently and shift the nervous system patterns that drive your behavior. As a coach and an emotional resiliency expert, that is the work I do. I love to walk alongside you, whether it's one-on-one, in a small group that you choose, or with your workplace team. I can help you retrain your brain and nervous system so that stress no longer runs the show. You'll find ways to connect with me in the show notes. Let's do this work together.